Why haven't I stopped fasting? I mean, I'm at my goal weight. I'm already lean. I already have the health benefits. I'm not overweight anymore. Like, why do I still fast? Well, I've got 11 reasons why I do. So let's just jump right in. The first one, it's an easy way for me to achieve a deficit. You might look at me and say, well, why do you need to be in a deficit? Look, there are countless benefits to being in a caloric deficit, whether short-term, long-term. It doesn't matter, like there's a lot of benefits. And for me, it's easier to fast a couple of days per week, 2-3 days per week for 17, 18, 20 hours, and achieve a caloric deficit that way. I look at my calories over the course of a week generally. So for me, I can eat a little bit more on the days I'm not fasting, fast another day and eat a little bit less that way. And by the end of the week, I'm in a slight net deficit. And I feel like I've achieved that without counting every little calorie and being obsessed with it. It works very well for me that way. Number two, it gives me something to focus on. I find that if I don't give myself these parameters and put the guardrails up every now and then, it's way too easy to kind of slip. Like it's the law of attrition, right? It's a gray line, it's a gray line, it's a gray line until it's a black line. And anyone that's ever battled with being overweight or battled with food or battled with addiction before knows what I'm talking about. And if you haven't, then I don't expect you to understand, because it's only something that those of us that battle with addiction and deal with those things could understand. It keeps my focus. Fasting keeps my focus way better than just counting calories. Number three is more of a physiological thing. When I look at my blood work, my fasting insulin levels are very, very low. And I have done a myriad of different diets. I've gone off of fasting. I've gone on and off of keto. I've done Mediterranean. I'll tell you, the best effect that I get is from a lower carb Mediterranean style approach with a couple days per week of intermittent fasting. My fasting insulin is very low. And that's a good indicator that I'm insulin sensitive. It's a good indicator that my metabolic profile is good. My ability, my entire glucose management system in my body seems to be operating exactly where I want it. And although I can't 100% say that fasting is the reason, because I'm not don't have all the code of my body to be able to tell you that that's exactly what it is, I can tell you I've done it a bunch of different ways, and this definitely seems to have the biggest impact on my metabolic health. Number four is now it's a tool versus a lifestyle. And that means that it's fun for me to be able to plug and play fasting into different situations. So instead of it being something that I just live a fasting lifestyle where I fast every day for 16 hours, it's nice to have it as a tool. Where I say, you know what? Today I have X that I need to do. I need to have a lot of cognitive demand. It's going to be a good day for me to fast. And it maintains its intensity. And that's the big thing. It maintains the intensity of it by using it as a tool rather than a lifestyle. But that's exactly the benefit that I get from it now. Nowadays, I can go 3, 4, 5 days without fasting and say, you know what, I'm going to fast tomorrow. And I'll be damned if tomorrow doesn't end up being a day where I have laser-like focus, very little appetite, and the ability to tackle lots of my to-dos. So it's the big reason why I still fast. The fifth reason, I still want fasting to be easy. I also want it to remain fun. And if I do fasting sparingly, then that means that it remains fun. It remains this anomaly that I can just use when I need it. But I also don't want to lose the ability to fast. Why? Because I don't want to be the guy that goes out for a hike, forgets to bring a snack, and gets hungry and can't finish the hike. I don't want to go for a run and have to think about food all the time. I love being able to get by with not eating. I also know that eating is important and I can't go too far, right? I need to consciously remind myself to eat sometimes. But being able to know that I can go without food and keeping the maintenance on that system, that fat adaptation, if you will, is a very important thing to me. And I figure out ways to make it fun. I figure out ways to make it potentially more effective. One of the things that I do is I experiment with like different things that I can consume during a fast, different coffees, different teas, different MCT powders, different things. I have fun with it and I use it as a tool and I experiment so that my fasting remains easier. One of the biggest hacks that I've found to make fasting easier for me is green tea. Like on the days that I fast, I consume more green tea than the days I don't fast. I find I get a potential autophagy benefit based upon the research, but I can't tell you for sure. But I also feel like I feel clearer, I feel mentally good. And then if I feel like I need a different effect, I can switch to a different kind of tea. I also put a link down below for the teas that I typically use when I'm fasting. They're specific fasting teas. and from a company called Pique tea. They have a cold extracted tea. It was formulated with Dr. Jason Fung, who's a world-renowned fasting expert. He's authored 2 bestsellers in this category. So this cold extracted method keeps it so that the polyphenols stay strong and can actually don't get denatured in the process. So it's USDA certified organic. Then it's also triple toxin screened. So you're not dealing with sort of the nasty stuff that can be on tea leaves sometimes. Now they have a few different kinds of tea. They have bergamot tea, which is great just for I don't know, the flavor, but also just being able to kind of get through your day. They have a matcha fasting tea, which is just like the name implies, a really good quality green tea matcha. They have a ginger type tea, a ginger green tea, which is really good for digestion. And then they have a cinnamon herbal tea. So the cinnamon tea you can have later in the day if you don't want to have caffeine. So the link that I put down below is for 12% off plus a free gift. So use that special link down below. It's in the top line of the description. That's 12% off any of the fasting teas or the fasting tea bundle plus the free gift. So check them out after this video. This next one is very personal, why I still fast. I like to be able to train for hiking and train for backpacking and train for outdoorsy stuff and not have to be dependent on food. But there's a lot of people that are out there like that. And the thing is that as my kids are getting older and I now have more opportunities to go do the things that I like to do, like hike up mountains and do weird things like that, it makes more sense for me to be able to pack without a lot of food. It's lighter. And that is, believe it or not, as funny as it sounds, a big personal reason why I like to fast. I'd like to maintain that level of ability to go without food because it makes it easier for me to do the things that I love. Now, I would also be lying if I didn't talk about number 7, which it keeps me very lean. It's A, part of my brand to stay lean. B, I like being lean. C, I like being lean. And D, I like being lean. Point is I like being lean. It feels good. And fasting is an easy way for me to get there and to stay there, especially at maintenance. Now, fasting works great for losing weight. I've been there, but it works probably even better for maintaining. Like, it gives me the flexibility. Candidly, if I do slip up and I kind of eat too much or do something, it's easy for me to course correct, put myself back into a deficit via fasting in a way that I know, that I love, and that I'm familiar with. The next one is one that's up for debate, depending on who you talk to, and that's the world of autophagy. Now, hear me out on this. You have part of the fasting community that arguably shouts a little too loud from the rooftops about autophagy, and I get that, and I think that's why the fasting crowd comes under fire a lot, is because sometimes claims are made that are a bit aggressive. But let's be real here. Fasting does induce autophagy, but not as much as exercise, and a caloric deficit is going to induce autophagy. But fasting definitely induces autophagy more so than just caloric restriction because it's a pretty extreme caloric restriction. And the way that I look at it is I'm certainly not having autophagy. So at least I'm getting more of a potentially good thing. So if I fast and I exercise, the way that I look at it is if there's potential DNA repair that occurs, if there's potential reductions in oxidative stress, if there's potential histone deacetylase inhibition and DNA improvement, if there's potential autophagy and cellular recycling, even if they were all just a big mystery because they're seen in vitro and not necessarily applied in a clinical setting in humans, even if, what's the downside? It seems like a lot of upside potential without really any downside risk. So I'm gonna say that autophagy is still a reason that I fast. Number 9 is my mental health. I feel better when I fast. Maybe it's the ketones that are forming. Maybe it's less neuroinflammation. Maybe it's less oxidative stress. I could rattle on a bunch of potential reasons why for me personally, but I can tell you, I'm a happier human being when I'm fasting. Not literally during the fast, although during that period I am quite happy, but I just mean in general. A couple days per week just seems to clear something out of my brain. It makes a big difference. Number 10, because I have a confidence that I can still maintain muscle even when I do it. I know a lot of people that have quit intermittent fasting because they don't want to lose muscle. I will argue with that and say that unless you're doing a lot of prolonged fasts, as long as muscle protein needs are met, and as long as there's a muscle stimulus, you're probably not going to lose muscle. In fact, I just talked about a study today in another video. I can't remember where it was published, but they had people go on an 800 calorie a day diet for 90 days. And they found that if they stimulated the muscle compared to if they were sedentary, they literally built muscle, even on 800 calories. And there's other studies that talk about like being in a caloric deficit, as long as protein needs are met and high protein diets are had, you're gonna build muscle. So I am confident that even though I fast a few days per week, that as long as I'm training hard and as long as I'm eating enough protein, I'll maintain my muscle. So that entire qualm is out of my head. I don't worry about that. I keep a conscious eye on it, but I don't freak out about it. And the last reason is because I can align my circadian cues. It doesn't need to be body composition related. I fast because I keep my sleep schedule in check that way. I relate my food intake to the diurnal cues that are outside, environmental cues, the diurnal rhythms. I eat when it's light out. I fast when it's dark out. Sometimes I early time restrict feeds so that I can sleep better. If I'm traveling and I don't want to get jet lag, I'll adjust my fasting accordingly so that I can bounce back and forth faster. Anecdotally, it's made a huge impact on me, and I think we've seen with a lot of Andrew Huberman's stuff that he's talked about that circadian biology is a very real thing. At least it's become more mainstream now. So timing our food can make a big difference, and it does for me. I'll see you tomorrow.